Welcome to Analyst Talk with Jason Elder. It's like coffee with an analyst, or it could be whiskey with an analyst reading a spreadsheet, linking crime events, identifying a series, and getting the latest scoop on association news and training. So please don't beat that analyst and join us as we define the law enforcement analysis profession one episode at a time.
Thank you for joining me. I hope many aspects of your life are progressing. My name is Jason Elder, and today our guest has 5 years of law enforcement analysis experience, all as a crime analyst in Hutchinson PD in Kansas. She studied criminal justice at West Texas and Kansas Wesleyan University. She's here to talk about, among other things, analyzing jail data. Please welcome Angie Stroda. Angie, how we doing?
Doing great. How are you?
I am doing very well. How's Kansas these days?
It's been hot.
Yeah?
Yeah, hot and humid. Very hot.
That's what happens in August.
Yeah, true.
Now, do you get the full seasons there? So is the summers hot and the winters cold?
Yes, usually. Yeah, we get snow, ice, unfortunately, and then we have hot summers. So we definitely get all of the 4 seasons up here.
Yeah, and it's flat and windy.
Yes, very windy. I don't know how, I think we're probably windier than the Windy City, Chicago. So
Yeah, that's great. All right. So looking forward to hearing your journey, how you got to becoming an analyst in Hutchinson. For the listeners, we are going to do a call-in segment today. Shit you hear in the office. So if you have a wild office story, get your calls in now. All right, Angie, how did you discover the law enforcement analysis profession?
Well, I had originally, like you mentioned, I had gone to school and wanting to go into law enforcement. And due to health issues and everything, I decided to go a corporate route. And I hadn't really thought about the law enforcement profession. I thought that was something that I would never get to do due to physical stuff. I worked in the corporate until, of course, when I started last 5 years ago here. But I was in the pharmaceutical industry and the biofuel industry, and COVID hit, and the biofuels and gas took a huge hit, if you remember, along with a lot of other businesses. And so I was laid off from that job. And so then I had plenty of time to kind of reevaluate my life, thinking about what I wanted to do. And in looking through open posts and everything, I saw that Hutchinson Police Department was looking for a crime analyst. And I read through the requirements and what a crime analyst would do. So I was like, wow, that would be a really good way for me to get back where I wanted to be, but still use the skills that I developed over the last 20 years. And I thought, well, I probably won't have much of a chance, but I sent my resume in, and I got a call the next day, actually, and I interviewed with the chief at that time, and he offered me the job.
Nice.
And he said, I have no doubt that you'll be able to learn everything as far as like mapping goes and learning about criminal behavior and kind of just law enforcement in general. He said, I have no doubt that you'll be able to figure all that out quickly. So welcome aboard.
Yeah, this is quite a different journey from what I hear often. Usually I hear analysts that in the government sector for years, decades, and then they might leave to go to the private sector. And so you go right into the private sector right away, and you work for Xerox, you work for McKesson, which for those that may not know, is dealing with pharmacy data. And you mentioned the ethanol products corporation that you worked for at the end there before COVID. Like on your resume here, your summary says results-oriented individual who thrives in fast-paced and competitive environments, detail-oriented, analytical, and a strategic thinker.
Yes. So when my skills that I had gotten over the years, I think he was really impressed with the Excel skills I had with building dashboards. He was a very statistics oriented chief. I've done what's best when I was working with biofuels to determine shipping patterns and what best as far as like logistics and what was the least inexpensive routes. So just the years of working with Excel and different types of programs with Access. And then, of course, I got a base of customer service in just different industries. And I think that with him, I mean, and when it goes for like strategic data, I mean, it's like data's data. You just tell me where to go pull it, and you get to know how to present to different types of people. So if you tell me a little bit of what you're looking for and you point me in the right direction, I'm going to be able to pull that for you and clean it up. So I think he was looking for somebody that could come in and take all the data and put it in a format that was good for him and the department, that he could easily see and track, because he had really kind of started the intelligence-led policing here, and they had an individual that did some of the crime analysis before I did, but a lot of that I had to teach myself because she was already gone when I came in. So my biggest areas that I needed him to work on was learning how to do all the mapping, and then of course all the intel stuff. But when I started, I jumped right in and had dashboards built in less than a month.
So when you get to the police department, take us back to the first couple weeks, because you just, as you mentioned, you were able to get a dashboard up in a month. But when you're first walking in and you're getting used to your environment, is the fast-paced environment that you came from, how did it relate in terms of the police department? Was it on par? Did it seem slow?
It was slow coming into it, mainly because a lot of like the detectives or officers, they weren't really used to having like an analyst here. I mean, other than kind of getting a few graphs and charts, some intel briefings. And so when I first came in, I'm like, okay, where do I get this? Where do I get that? And a lot of the detectives and even some of the supervisors like, oh gosh, I'm not sure, because they're not dealing with the analytic portion or the data.
Yeah.
They're doing the police work. So it was difficult to find everything that I needed right at first, and kind of getting down what type of crimes that needed to be reported on. So, but it was a little slow when I first came on, and it's just like it gradually, the role grew and grew, because when they had originally had posted my role, they were going to add a intelligence analyst as well. But I found that doing just the data portion, that wasn't going to really fill up my time. And so I just kept asking for more responsibilities. And luckily, my lieutenant at the time, he was always very supportive. He was like, sure, I'll get you on jail calls. Sure, I'll let you do this. And they learned it was very beneficial. And I ended up really kind of filling both roles.
So I find it interesting. Me, myself, I had a 10-year law enforcement analyst career, and now I've spent the last 12-ish years in the private sector. It's fascinating looking at the private sector, looking at that, because it seems like it's built in to analyze data. Like they need data, they're making decisions on data, and it's interesting from my vantage point looking back now that like why law enforcement, you have to have a whole mantra about data-driven decision making or the use of data. And it seems like data in police departments is sometimes an afterthought, something that they just have to do because the government requires them to do it or somebody requires them to do it. And it's fascinating the mindset of certain police departments when they get an analyst, never had an analyst before or never worked with an analyst before, and then an analyst comes in your situation where you have decades of experience using data to make decisions.
Yeah, exactly. Especially even like with mapping, and it's like, how did you know where you're hot? I always say that the feelings had to be backed by data. Like, oh, I have a feeling that, and that happens a lot with law enforcement. Well, we know that certain areas are worse than others, but do you have the data to back that up? Because sometimes feelings aren't exactly true. And so beforehand, I think of these law enforcement agencies that may not have an analyst or what they're doing to help reduce crime and not have any kind of mapping or data that says, hey, this area is popping up, or they're just going by officers talking to each other, because one platoon might go, oh, I'm working off beat 4 and we're having a bunch of catalytic converter thefts. But then they don't say much to the next beat, or I mean the next platoon, and they don't see it. It's just, I think having an analyst just kind of centralizes all of the information, putting out hotspots, mapping, and then I think you can visualize that and know, hey, this is where I need to be, or command staff can make those decisions of, hey, this is where we need to be, and come up with a strategy.
When you got there, is the data in a records management system?
Yes.
Okay.
Some of it. Well, I should say most of it. There are some that, some of them I kind of have to build a workaround, I guess. I can get the data from it, but got to go to a different type of report. But I mean, for the most part, the actual data I can get out of our records management.
Yeah. And so you're building the Excel dashboards. Are you connecting with like an ODBC connection and bringing in the data that way to populate the dashboard?
No, we really don't get to, I guess, have access to do that.
No.
So one time I said, am I able to get connections to your SQL tables? Am I able? And they said no.
Oh,
I'm like,
geez.
okay. So what I do is they do have kind of like a behind the scenes, I call it like a monster pivot table, and you can adjust it for dates and what type of reporting, and it does pull from tables. But I have it set to where it'll just refresh, and then I can just copy the data and dump it, and it's all formatted and everything, so it's really just kind of a click of a copy paste update done.
Yeah, so once you get it in to the workbook, it can just flow from there and populate all
Right,
the
yeah.
necessarily.
So very little work to do as far as doing monthly updates and things like that.
All right. And the population is 40,000 people in Hutchinson. What are your main crime problems? You mentioned catalytic converters, but I mean, what are some of the main issues that you've experienced over the years?
Our main issue is property crime and drugs, and they go hand in hand. It seems like drugs tend to fuel everything. We have pretty low violent crime rate. So yeah, it's mainly property and drugs.
And you mentioned GIS. Are you using Esri?
No, we don't have that subscription. I just use the free one, the QGIS.
Oh, okay. You're self-taught in that. So how is that teaching yourself that tool?
Well, QGIS was very hard, and I only know a fraction of what I use it to what I need.
Yeah.
But I found that had a pretty steep learning curve.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I use a lot of QGIS maps, I'll use Excel 3D maps, especially if it's not data that I need to distance and measure all those type of things. I find that like for presentation, for the like command staff, the city, that 3D Excel dashboards are really kind of the best visually. And they're easy for people to use, because if you ever use the pivot table, then you can use this map in 3D Excel. And especially even if you dump a lot of data into it, you get to like, I don't want to see this particular, you're just able to kind of select what you want. I mean, you can do that in QGIS, but another, like an officer or some of the command staff, they're not going to go do that in QGIS. So you have to make it something easy for individuals to be able to go and go, okay, well, I can do this because I'm just clicking buttons.
So you're bringing in the mapping data into the Excel dashboard, or did you say you're using the Excel mapping?
So it doesn't come through to the Excel dashboard.
Mm-hmm.
What I do is, and I wish they would have it to where I could do that, but it's really just kind of like a link that they can just open.
Oh, I see.
If you just click open, they can immediately pull it up.
Right.
And if they're just like, sometimes if like the city or somebody that really doesn't need to manipulate it, I'll create a video for monthly presentations or whatever. You can create a video of like the time lapse and 3D maps, and I'll just create a video and they can just click on the video and watch it.
Now, are these dashboards going all the way down to the patrol officer, or is he staying at like middle management above?
All officers and command staff can use it. It's accessible to all of them. You find some that don't want to mess with it because it scares them, and then you have some that are very curious about crime stats. I mean, because it had, not only did I build the dashboards for like just crime stats, like your part 1 crimes, we measure our proactivity here as well. And so they like to be able to look at their own proactivity, because I've made it to where you can select by officer, and they can see if they're meeting goals and things.
Yeah, go into that a little bit, proactivity and some of the metrics that are involved in that.
So what we consider the proactive calls are officer initiated.
Mm-hmm.
Those would be like your community engagements and any intelligence gathered. You have traffic stops and warrant services, field investigation, like FIs. And so we measure those and monthly so that they're able to kind of see what they're doing. So you have like 2 types of community engagements. One that you're building trust with the public, and they go to schools and just relationship building. And then the hopes is that they feel more at ease with officers and are more willing to share problems that are going on in their community or their neighborhoods and report things that they see. And so that kind of leads to intelligence gathering.
I gotcha.
And their FIs, you are able to see where a town of our size and the drug issues, a lot of our, I guess, drug addicts, they hop around place to place. I mean, they'll be in a place for maybe 6 months and then they move on. So FIs usually kind of help with who's in the area. They talk to neighbors and a little bit more specific if they're seeing something suspicious in the area. And then, of course, traffic stops and warrant services. It seems honestly, and I haven't been able to prove it really statistically, but it's because you just don't have when the chief started, it's really only going back a couple years. So as far as like really getting into that intelligence-led policing, there's really not enough data there to tell me exactly what kind of impact, but that's always one thing that I want to be able to measure is the impact of those particular officer-led initiatives, the effect on crime rate. I mean, we can see the crime rate go down, which ours has been going down. I mean, it was back in 2018, I think it was 40 something per thousand, and now it's down to 27. So, I mean, there's been big strides made, but it seems that perhaps kind of some FIs and warrant services that are applied in a particular area, as far as that effect, being able to truly measure the effectiveness is like, if there's more warrant services, what weight do those have? I mean, is an FI more important than a warrant service, or more important than a traffic stop?
Yeah.
So those are things that want to be able to kind of look at a little more. I mean, we know that having officers in the area deters crime and helps reduce crime.
Yeah, I like the fact that there's an incentive for the patrol officer to be on the dashboard, right? You talked about the stats that he or she can track for their own person. It's not just the part 1 crimes that you mostly see. It's information that they're intrigued by, and they have their own personal goals to try to improve upon.
Right. And then I had created a dashboard as well that is what I called like a suspect dashboard. And it's like I could never just like find anything where I could go put in burglary, tell me your top 5 people or your top 10 people. And so what I did is I extracted like suspect data, arrest data, and integrated some pictures with it as well of like mugshots. And what I did was made it so that an officer or anybody else wanted to go in, they go, okay, for this year, who are my top 10 burglars or who are my top 10 car thieves? And so every selection that they make, and you can drill it down to types of crime as far as getting much more granular, and all that information changes along with the pictures. And it shows a map, and that's using Bing Maps. But the map will list the person as like, okay, well, this person has the highest amount of crimes, is burglary. And there will be a map that shows where all his crimes, he or she, where their crimes were, and how many arrests they've had, who, if they're on corrections or probation, who's their probation officer, that, and what their last known address was. And so you're able to see all that and then it's the top 10.
Yeah. So that data sounds like that would come from the sheriff's office. Is that correct?
Yes. I mean, we're kind of integrated, as far as I have the ability to pull that data.
Nice.
So
nice.
Yeah, difference between municipal and district. So I learned that early on, that I was like, oh, I guess I got to request that too. Because I was like, why am I not seeing this?
Now, it makes me think back during my time at Cincinnati. So Ohio has pretty open sunshine laws, right? You can get a lot of data about in Ohio, right? And one of the rules is there's a restriction on probation and parole data, even for law enforcement. So I could not gather the information that you were talking about. It was stressful because we realized that there was recidivism, and once they got out, and that we knew that there was a good chance that they might be doing some of the crimes again. But we had that disconnect there, and it was really frustrating. So that information that you have there at your disposal, not everybody is going to have access to, but it's great that it seems like it's in sync with you and the police department and the sheriff's department.
Yeah, they provide the corrections lists and probation lists so that we're aware of who's on what.
Yeah. All right. Well, this brings us to your analyst badge story. And for those that may be new to the show, the analyst badge story is the career-defining case or project an analyst works. And for you, it's 2024, so this is just last year, but you're dealing with a ATM jackpot series.
Yes, this would have been last summer. We had calls come in that the ATMs at several different locations had been accessed. A couple of them were not successful, but they did have a couple that were. And normally when we thought of ATMs being accessed, it was somebody like hooking a chain up and pulling the front end off, or them trying to physically break into it. But this was a software.
Oh.
So they installed software that caused the ATM to spit out money. And when looking back we had the ATM footage, because it shows, they always have that camera right there and it shows the individual, but these individuals were not, you could tell they weren't local, didn't recognize them. And they were working in a team of about six or seven. And they had like earphones in, you could tell they were talking. And like one would come up to the machine, do something, then another one would come up to the machine and do something. So they all had like their roles and jobs. And we had these perfect pictures of them. And so no, but we didn't get any hit on facial recognition on the open source facial recognition that I use, like PimEyes or search for faces, those type of things. And didn't get any hits on that. And then we have like a regional email group to where we talk to police departments within like an hour radius, an hour to 2 hours. And then we noticed that neighboring towns sent in the same info, and it was the same leader, because it was the same guy that started it off, I guess. And I was like, oh, so this group had been here and then been north and been out east, and they even had the same outfit on. But so we couldn't get any hits on facial rec. None of the other departments had any info. So we had looked at security footage. We couldn't find a vehicle, anything. And so we're just going to be kind of like at a standstill. So what I decided was, well, we know they were here at certain times and days, and then they'd be up in another jurisdiction for these times and days. And so what I did is we use Flock quite a bit, which is a great tool.
For those that might not be familiar with Flock, you can give a quick description of that, please.
Flock is a license plate reader. So they have cameras, and it just works like the other license plate readers, but it's very accurate. I think it's very easy to use, and I'm able to you can put in descriptions of vehicles that you might be looking for. Like if you have a suspect that left in a white Camaro, you can go look at those cameras and see if a white Camaro is hit and it matches the description. Or you can put in an actual license plate. It's called like a hot list. And you can put that in and you'll get notified if they hit one particular cameras. And then like NCIC entries automatically go in there. So if you have stolen vehicles, it'll pop up, and if it hits one of your cameras, it'll let our teams know. So I think it's been a very effective, especially with like stolen vehicles. I think Wichita had good luck with stolen vehicles and homicide suspects. So it's just an incredibly helpful tool. So what I did is I found cameras, looked at our cameras, and looked at like your Salina cameras and different areas I would have thought they would have hit. And you can put in also, if you think if the vehicle's from out of state, you can change that to show only out of state vehicles. So working on the assumption that they weren't around here, it seemed like they were way too organized, and that they were probably traveling from state to state. So I tried the out of state license plates first. So what I did is I ran all the information on our cameras with like Salina's cameras, and then when I got that data, I went ahead and queried them against each other to find common license plates, and whittled it down to about 5, where it had been the other cameras that I had looked at. And so I thought, wow, that's pretty small list, so thank God for that. And so I took those 5 license plates, and then I got more granular and looked at, okay, what times did they hit these cameras? And after kind of whittling that down, I came up with 1. And I thought it hit those cameras, and it could have been at all those places. So I was working with our property crimes detective, and I said, this license plate is a pretty good suspect that they could have been at all the places. And when I looked it up, it was a rental car. So I gave that information. I said, you might want to find out who rented that car. And he did reach out, and we got a name, but no driver's license picture. And later on, we had Clearview, which is like a facial recognition on steroids. It's really something.
Is that with LexisNexis?
Yes.
Yeah.
And they had just kind of introduced they had partnered with LexisNexis, and so we always get those little things that says, "Oh, this is on LexisNexis now." And I was like, "Ooh!" And I talked to the command staff and chief and everything, and they said, "Well, set up a demo." And I was like, "Okay." And we had the demo. It was quite impressive. And I said, "Hey," we were like, "Hey, can we send you some pictures
While you're at it?
While you're at it, can you help us identify these people?" So I sent over the photos that we had, and it did come back with some information on a few of the suspects. Well, one of the suspects that came back on the facial rec name matched to the person who rented the vehicle. That we had the rental information, so we were pretty sure that this was the group. Two of them were brothers, but it turned out that they were from Venezuela, I think. We were able to get all this information over to, get it federally taken care of, because there was more than just ours.
I see.
And so we got, because we were like, we haven't had these type of ATM thefts before. It was kind of new to us, and trying to get help from the feds on that. And it had turned out we got a couple of the guys were arrested up in Nebraska for the same thing, and it turned out they were our guys too. So last I knew, they were federally being indicted. But if we had never found that vehicle to kind of confirm, once we got the clear view picture and everything, it just kind of tied everything together. And it just showed the importance of what you're able to do with Flock to get suspect vehicles.
No, that's good work. I do have just my own confusion. So when you were comparing using Flock to the different cameras, had they hit different ATMs like in the same night, or had that gone over several days?
It went over several days.
Okay. And
so they had come here once, and then they went somewhere else, and then they came back.
I see.
Yeah, so it was over a span of about a week.
Okay, so they probably rented the car for a week and then went about their business, going to all these different ATMs.
Along with Flock, there are other license plate readers, and so I looked into I put that plate into another system, and it found where it had taken a picture at a parked rental place in Kansas City. So we had a pretty good idea where they rented it from, because that same vehicle with the same license was parked right out in front of the rental place. So that kind of helped us too. So I know the right place to call.
That's a great use of license plate readers, what you did there, and being able to whittle it down, only have so many vehicles that were in that. Would you say, actually, you whittled it down to just the one that was in, at least out of state, that was in each one of those areas during the time of each theft?
Yes.
Huh. And then take me back to when they were actually manipulating the ATM. Are they putting something in the machine that's overwriting the system, or are they putting in some kind of codes in? Is it some kind of code combination that they're putting into dialing into the machine?
I want to say they switched out the motherboard in it, but they have a universal key. All they had to do was pop the top.
Okay.
So it wasn't. I'm sure you can get those on the dark web somewhere.
Okay. You said basically it was a team effort, so everybody had their piece of the pie. How long did it take them to crack open and get the money?
It was, I want to say, anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes.
Okay.
And they just kind of rotated in, and you would see people walk by in the background, but unless somebody's really paying attention, then you're like, oh, okay, and nobody even batted an eye.
Someone's standing behind them waiting in line, and they're like, hey, I'm stealing from this. It's going to take me about 20 minutes. Can you come back later?
Yeah. So and I think that may be why they had rotation. Somebody would be there for 10 minutes, the next person come in. So maybe it didn't look as suspicious, but they had people sitting out like in the parking lot and stuff, and you could see that they were watching. make sure that the police didn't roll up or anything like that.
Hi, my name is Victoria Curtis, and my public service announcement is that despite how we may act, analysts are not omniscient. Please don't just give us a name and tell us to work our magic. We're not witches, we're data people. Please give us context, a report number, a date, literally anything. I'm begging you, just a little crumb of information.
My name is Erin Havelka, and a pet peeve is people who hoard information when we're all supposed to be working together. If there's one thing I can't stand, it's being on a case where someone is holding on to all the pieces of information like a squirrel holding their collection. At the end of the day, we all have the same goal: to solve the problem, investigate, and help get the job done. When we share what we know, everyone wins.
Hi, this is Jennifer Scavotto. I like to tell people to try to find your why, try to find a mantra or a quote that when it is tough in this profession, you can kind of say that quote or your motivational to keep things going. So one of mine happens to be a movie quote. It is do or do not, there is no try. And that is just something that I keep repeating to myself if I need a little inspiration.
Now you have another story, right? The one that you use some forecasting on.
Oh, yes. Along with Flock, I usually will take, like if we have GPS data from a vehicle, ankle monitor data, and I'll compile that and do some analysis. And we had a subject that was dealing meth, and we had GPS. And so I took all his data and I narrowed down like the best times of day that he was probably going to pick up, the hour, so that way we could be prepared. Like, okay, this is our best chance when he goes. So I given him that data, and sure enough, the day I predicted, he took off. And a lot of them go to Wichita. And he went to Wichita. They were on him, follow him, and he came back. And as soon as he came into the county, they're trying to get him stopped. Well, then he floored it. And he was just speeding and running and throwing dope out the window or out the sunroof. And finally got him stopped, but there's really just kind of powdery stuff left. They didn't have enough to charge him with distribution.
Man, so that worked, chucking all that out the window.
Yeah, or so he thought.
Yeah.
So next day on the jail calls, because that's always the best time to go listen to jail calls, is right after they've been arrested, because they need somebody to do something for them. And he called his friend on a video chat, and they're talking, and he goes, "Hey, do you remember where we buried that dog that time out on such and such road?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, I do remember that." And she's like, how far was that? And he's like, well, it was like when you were going over the second hill. I'm like, okay, so he had chucked some dope out the window, and he was trying to tell her where to go get it. And so I called my lieutenant at the time. I'm like, hey, and timing's everything on jail calls too. So the quicker you're on them, and I was quick getting that information because we wanted to get it before she did. And so I gave him the information, and he went out there with a couple of our spec op detectives and went pretty much where he described. And lo and behold, they found the bag of meth that he chucked. So they were finally able to get the distribution, because they never learn. I don't know why they give so much information, or they think they're being clever, but they're not on jail calls.
Yeah. No, there's so much. It's interesting to me that they're even committing crimes with a ankle monitor on.
Yeah, I had several cases where we had a string of auto burns, and over the years I've learned, which people are repeat offenders and who does what. So I was like, oh, and they were kind of the area where I knew this guy lived, and he was on. I said, I'm gonna go pull his ankle monitor, and I pulled his ankle monitor, and sure enough, he was at the auto burglaries. I was like, oh my gosh. So I worked with a property crimes detective, and they were able to get some like ring camera footage. And sure enough, he knew what time to go look at that ring footage because of the ankle monitor. So we had the ankle monitor and ring camera footage putting him at the places.
Oh man.
We had another gal that committed storage burglaries. Same thing. She just, I guess they don't think that we're going to look at it, or
I
I'm
guess
not sure.
the burglaries and the meth pickup, at least I can understand a little bit because you don't have that specific point in time normally, right?
Yeah.
Unless somebody reported. But the robbery, most people are gonna know the exact time they got robbed and the
Yeah.
location. So that
Yeah.
one's really bad.
Yeah. But yeah, don't. It just amazes me that they will commit crimes when they're still on an ankle monitor.
Yeah. But let's go back to the jailhouse data and talk about that a little bit because you're not the first analyst that's been on the show and talking about the importance of jail calls, I should call them, not jailhouse, jail calls. And so I just wanted to give you an opportunity to just really elaborate on what you've been able to get out of reviewing those jail calls.
Well, we've able to go back, like if we've had search warrants, been able to hear if we missed something. They've said, "Oh, what about go look here? Is that here?" We've had guys that say, "Oh yeah, well tell mom to go check the glove box." I'm like, "Okay, it's in the glove box." And they can go back out there, and sure enough, there it is. But other than information to be able to kind of stack on more charges or whatever, you also have jail calls where you're kind of getting to know these people. Not personally, but you get a real feel for people and how they're going to be. You get to see their associates. I've gotten so many warrants out of those calls because the video calls, they're able to call from home. And so their friends or whatever will call somebody in jail, and I go, "Oh, they have a warrant." And so I'm looking at their background and everything, and then I'm like, "Okay, I know where they are." And so then I give the information to some officers and go, "Okay, well, this is where so and so staying." So there you go, easy pickings. And but
Man, yeah,
yeah,
don't answer jailhouse calls if you have a warrant against you. That is the
they just don't
tip of the
think.
day.
But the funny thing is that when we do find these things that they're talking about, or they've been picked up on a warrant, and they're like, "How do they know where I was?" They do not link it back to a jail call. They think somebody ratted them out,
Yeah.
and so I'm like, "Well, that's good because the less they know, the better. We want them to talk a lot on the calls." But I helped the marshals one time that they were looking for a violent offender, and they had like a ping, and it was in a particular area, but it was a pretty large radius. And I'm like, okay, we don't know who's in the area, so I was helping them determine, okay, who's in this area. And I saw a certain individual. I was like, oh, I know who that is. And had already been listening to this person's calls, and I went back and she was talking about, well, I so and so knocked on my door at 2 a.m, wanted me to let them in, and I was like, well, there he is. So, it's just a combination of knowing particular people and their habits and their associations. That's one of the big ones too, is being able to associate who their girlfriend, their boyfriend, who their brothers and sisters or friends are, of where they'll go, or so that when you're building your association charts and things, that information is golden. A lot of that is you just have to go in there and listen. And I know it can be tedious, obviously, and usually you'll know. You have, like I said, like repeat offenders that you can kind of focus on. But yeah, if you're not listening to jail calls, you're missing out.
Yeah.
Because I've gotten so much intel from jail calls, and I think they just forget because they have that screen that comes up and says this jail call or this call is being recorded, blah blah blah. And I know they see it, But it's like, I don't know if they just wanted to get to gossiping and they forget they're being recorded, or they don't think we're going to listen to it. But we had people that, this one guy, he was talking to his girlfriend, and he goes, "Hey, did you send that Easter card?" And I'm like, "Easter card?" And he was so worried about it. He goes, "I haven't got my Easter card yet." And I thought, oh, okay, now I know why. There's something on it.
Yeah.
Because they actually will put some kind of wax or stuff on the mail. Now they just view their mail on the kiosk, so they don't get the physical mail, at least not here. They don't. But that was one of the reasons why, is because they would have Suboxone strips or something somehow on the paper.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. No, well, hey, this show I've learned there's a lot of guests that have told me that by the end of the interview, they actually forgot they were being recorded. We get to talking, and it's like, oh, it was a lot of fun, and I actually forgot that we were being recorded.
Yeah.
So it's not just the people at jailhouse either I've experienced. So the jail calls. All right. Well, let's talk about near repeat analysis. You mentioned another problem that you have at Hutchinson is with property crime. And so you've had some success identifying additional property crime using near repeat analysis.
Yes, we have. Most of our crimes that we had that are committed, the property crimes, are really just kind of somebody's in the area. They're not, it's kind of like an opportunity. We don't have a lot of the organized robberies or burglaries. I mean, you do get those on occasion, but we're small enough that we don't quite have that huge problem. But I was reading on better ways to predict where future crimes would be. And since property crimes those are a little better because somebody's in the area. And so I went in and I was reading about the near repeat Jerry Radcliffe at Temple University, where the calculator is. And so it was relatively easy to use, but I looked at, and I kind of use it a little different way. When you use the calculator, it'll give you the ideas of like, okay, your radius is that you're 40% more likely to have another property crime within 500 feet, 1,000 feet. So it can vary on the area. It can vary from city to city. And then it also will give you that time window of like the heightened risk of when that crime could occur. So if it moves past, let's say, a 10-day window, it's diminishing off and you may not see any more crimes for a minute in that area. So what I did is I took all our information. I used about a couple of years worth of data, and I plugged that in, and I was able to, it told me the feet and time, which were the highest risk. So then I went in and plotted all of our crimes, and I put a radius around it for, ours was about 1,000 feet. And so I put the radius on those, and I colored them according to weeks. So a certain color meant it was more fresh. A different color meant the threat was waning. And what I would tell patrol and the command staff, I'm like, well, so when I plot these and these circles overlap, because if you start getting a few crimes, they'll start to overlap, and you can definitely tell that it's hitting right in that near repeat area. So to make it easy for patrol, I'll put those maps up, and I'll also map some property offenders that are out of jail, because I always monitor who's in and out of jail. And I'll map those property crime individuals so we can kind of see if there's a lot of property crimes popping up, who's in that area. But, with the circles overlapping, and then I'll kind of draw a square, go ahead and put like a red square for patrol, that when they have time, if they're not running from call to call, that if you're doing paperwork, you're just need something to do, you be in these areas, because it's determined that just the presence alone will deter crime. But for me doing this and looking at this, it's anywhere from 85 to 100% as far as those boxes that I tested it for months. And So we knew that if we start in, it never fails, that if you don't do anything about it, it'll just grow. But the importance of acting on those quickly, but building those near repeat maps for the officers to see, they're able to see, hey, this is more real time information. Like if you look at hotspots on maps, they may look at a 30-day hotspot. Well, if you had problems in the first part of the month or whatever, but somebody's been arrested, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to keep in that spot. But the near repeat is very, I'll say, it's more timely and right now. And as long as you act on those particular near repeat areas, you'll have luck. Like for example, I sent one out to patrol, and it's like there's somebody around here and there's going to be more crimes. And so they went down there and they found the guy right in that area that they recovered stolen property. And it's funny, as soon as he was arrested, the crimes went away in that area.
Funny how that works.
Yeah, it's funny. So you can really, with our type of crime, is usually if you pluck somebody out of the equation, then you'll start to see the crime dissipate. But I think those near repeat maps just make a huge difference, and it's easy for patrol to kind of read. And I'm able to present those to command staff, and I get those to them as soon as I see it. It's like you might start with just 2 crimes, and you're like, uh-oh. And so I'm get that over there, and that way we can let command staff decide how best to address it. But yeah, it's very accurate, at least for, I would say, my size of town, because it's kind of like a mid-sized town, I guess. But it works well for us, so keep on doing it.
Yeah. And we'll put links in the show notes for this. So this is near repeat calculator developed by our friend at Temple University, Dr. Jerry Radcliffe. For you though, as you're using the calculator, is there any particular setting that for precision that you've used when using the calculator that's really helped you out?
Well, so I usually will put in, you can choose like your temporal, you can use like 5, and then you can put in like what increments of feet. So to run it in the beginning, I believe I set it at like 500 feet and 1,000 feet and maybe 15 days. And you will have to take your Latin long and switch it to northing and different type of location. But I have a converting Excel sheet that converts it to northing. And so that would be, but other than that, it has to be into there's a CSV file, and there's not much that you really need to put in. It's really just kind of date and those location settings, and it'll do the rest, and you just upload it in that calculator. And for anybody that's new to using it, I would just try a few different settings, and you'll find what works.
Yeah. Now, are you loading all crime to the calculator, or are you filtering to certain crimes, or filtering to based on, I think all of these are done by the same person or group?
No, it's just like property crime. So like burglaries or auto burglaries, things that kind of flow together. But because ours is really just kind of, most of the time it's opportunity, really. You can put several types of property crimes. Obviously, I'm not going to put shoplifting in there. It's just because that's a different type. I mean, you're looking at burglaries, auto burglaries, stolen vehicles, and I'll run them separately to like just burglaries or just auto burgs. So it's just really whatever kind of works. But yeah, I only use it for property, and like I said, not shoplifting. I don't use it for criminal damage or any of that.
No, very good. And again, we'll put links in the show notes for additional information, because that's a free tool to law enforcement. It's definitely something that analysts should be taking advantage of. How about advice for our listeners? What advice do you have, whether it's new analysts, experienced analysts, maybe return on investment? What can they study now that will be important 5 years from now? What do you got for us?
Well, I think the biggest thing is for analysts, is looking at, especially reading a lot about open source now that AI gets more popular, looking at open source training or looking at different sites. I mean, there's some that have kind of like toolkits.
Mm-hmm.
You can use OSINT framework, but I don't know if you ever heard of Bellingcat. They have like a toolbox, and they even have challenges every week that you can go in, and they'll put what type of information you need to answer. It's a lot of fun, but it's also training you to use like reverse image tools or like forensic photo tools, even flights. And I mean, because it's amazing just how much you can get off the internet. Never really thought about. I mean, like all the flight patterns for everything that's in the air, and they even have like it's called SunCalc, where you can adjust. Like if you were looking for what time a photo was taken, you can go in there and measure the shadow, and it'll pinpoint a location. So I mean, these are just obviously those are what we're going to use all the time. But
Mm-hmm.
I think familiarizing yourself with a lot of the open source tools, especially if you do if you do are an intelligence analyst, and I'm sure a lot of people know that already that are intelligence analysts, but there's a lot of good toolkits. I use Multigo for free.
Yeah.
You only get so many so many credits for free, and then I get mad when I run out.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
But
it reminds me, I just had on the show for the latest Open Secrets deep dive episode with Jane Mondale. We went over some of the Start Me sites that she uses dedicated for open source, and just all the various links and tools that are out there for open source. So there's a lot out there, and some of these Start Me sites have really done a good job of organizing all these links so they're easy to find exactly what you're after and to explore.
right, yeah, and it's great. A lot of them are free. Some are kind of might have to, like, part of it's free, but some of them are paid. But yeah, there are a lot of great tools out there for open source. If you're looking for IP addresses, to reverse an IP address, to of course photographs, also, oh, what else? Yeah, oh, usernames, like emails and usernames. And a username, it just seems endless of
Yeah.
all
And I
these
got
different
that
tools.
that got me because I do use my similar username for various things. So,
Yeah, you plug it in and it'll pull back where else is this being used, and then
yeah.
you get a whole slew of, or have I been hacked for
Yeah.
emails. And
All right, very good. Well, let's take some calls then. Shit you hear in the office. So these are wild office stories and with our callers. So first on the line is Cassie. Cassie, what's some shit that you heard in the office?
So I'm sitting there and I'm listening to the radio. There is an armed robber that has just tried to rob a bank, and he's gone. They've lost sight of him. 5 minutes, there's silence. Then out of nowhere, an officer doesn't say where he's at, just says, "Suspect is currently eating chicken," and then the radio goes silent again.
Oh my goodness. Was it cutting in and out, or he was just watching them eat chicken?
He's just watching him eat chicken. Like he robbed a bank and then dead stopped and went and had himself some chicken.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. That must be some. Do you remember what chicken it was? That must be some really damn good chicken.
It was like KFC.
Oh,
Or was it Churches? I can't remember.
churches. All right. Well,
Yeah.
hey. But hey, well, if when he gets out, he should seek a sponsorship from churches.
Yeah.
Like, when you're on the go, always find time for churches. Well, just what you were saying about earlier with just nonchalantly going about their business after committing a crime.
yeah, it's funny.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess, but when you're hungry, right?
Yeah, he needed to eat.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I wonder, my follow-up question to her was like, did they allow him to finish the food? Or did they arrest him? Did he get to finish the chicken was what I'm really concerned about. That important aspect of the story. All right, next on the line is Anissa. What's some shit you heard in the office?
So I was in criminal investigations division, and I hear our homicide detective shout, "I don't want to be arrested." And I walk over and I'm like, "What's going on?" And then I soon realized he was on the phone with a scammer. And this types of calls happen a lot in Naples. So he kept the scammer on the phone, pretending to follow every direction he was being given. And then he concluded the call by faking a heart attack. And he ended the call like that, making the scammer think that he died of stress. And I thought that was hilarious.
So every once in a while, you'll see those YouTube videos or other, maybe even on Facebook, where the scammer calls the police department.
Yeah, we have that. We've had that too.
Yeah, and they just start asking them a bunch of questions, and then obviously they get a little nervous when they realize they called the police department. So
Yeah, it's funny, but yeah, most of the people up here will kind of keep them on the line and like just trying to annoy them, with different things, and it's funny.
And in this case, the person faked a heart attack, and so the scammer thinks that they just indirectly killed somebody.
Yeah.
Oh man! And then what do you do as a scammer? Because you can't. I guess you could. It would have been funny if he actually called back, just to make sure that he was okay.
Yeah.
Oh man! All right. Next on the line is Ethan. Ethan, what's some shit you heard in the office?
It was something that I didn't necessarily hear, but I was involved in. It was a debate that I had with a colleague years back, and the debate centered sort of around that common saying, like, I couldn't care less, but some people pronounce it, I could care less. And so the debate was all about what is the proper phrasing of that statement. And it got really detailed. Like we had a chart up on the wall and everything, like a graph. This is like your level of caring. And I vehemently argued that the proper pronunciation of the phrase is I could not care less, whereas my colleague said the proper pronunciation is I could care less. So for anyone who's listening, like next time you're at a party or a social gathering, you should ask what people think the proper phrasing of it is. I will always argue that the proper phrase is I could not care less, right? Because if you're saying I could care less on like a scale of caring where like maybe you're at 2, by saying I could care less, you're saying, okay, well, I care a little bit. Like I could go down to 1 or maybe 0. But if you're saying I couldn't care less, that basically indicates you're at like a 0. 0 to 10 is the level of caring. You're at a 0. You could not care less, meaning that you don't care at all. So that's my position on that statement.
Right. I love the attention to detail in that story, right? The amount of time and effort spent in the office debating about one particular thing.
Yeah, and he's right though, because it's if you say you couldn't care less, that means you're at 0.
Yeah. Younger folks, there was a time before Google where you didn't have this opportunity to end the debate because there was no Google out there, there was no internet out there. So stuff like this in the office would go on for a long time, and it maybe never end, because you could have got to the point probably 30 seconds into the debate of just Googling it, and Google will tell you which one is the proper way to talk about it or to say it. But
Yeah.
back in the day when there wasn't Google, you didn't have this bit of information. So it was just basically one person's idea of it versus another, and that could go on for hours, days, decades.
It's kind of like music lyrics.
Yeah.
Back in the day, you couldn't just automatically look them up. And then they came out with those packets. You could read all the lyrics on the back of the cassette tape insert.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Next on the line is David. David, what's some shit you heard in the office?
Jason, I got a story for you. Happened a few years ago, and it's still fresh in my mind. I was working in Buffalo, New York at the Erie Crime Analysis Center, and we had this hot incident that occurred. We were looking for a murder suspect, and it came in from a suburban jurisdiction from Cheektowaga Police Department. So my buddy Don Zumagala, who worked at the police department there in Cheektowaga and at the Crime Analysis Center, was working with us on this, and he's like, "Hey, we gotta find this murder suspect." And we got a phone number, And so this was all new at the time, but we were able to link in and work with Verizon, I believe, at the time. And so we started pinging the phone, right? Brand new stuff to us. And so we were right in the analysis center, analysts huddled around desk, pinging the phone. We got the director there. We got the police commissioner there, all the senior staff of the commissioner there, just all bewildered, like, wow, what is going on, And we start tracking this phone, and it's moving at a speed where it's like, oh, it's in a vehicle, and we're tracking this vehicle, and then it stops. It's at a corner, and then we zoom in, like, well, that's at a Tim Hortons, and Tim Hortons is, up in Canada and Buffalo, it's like Dunkin' Donuts, right? And so just keep that in mind. It's a donut shop, basically, coffee and donuts, right? Keep that in mind as I progress. So, like, well, what murder suspect is like stopping at Tim Hortons, right? And like, what they need to get a donut, they need some coffee. We're just kind of like perplexed, and then it just drives away, right? It goes to the drive-thru, drives away. It's going down the road, and then Don's like, looks like it's going to the police department. And sure enough, it pulls into the Cheektowaga Police Department, and then it stops. And so people are on the phone, calling over there, hey, track this vehicle. It's going. It's actually turning right into the police department. So they had units on pursuit, and then they come back, and everyone's converging at their own police department, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they come in and they find it, and it's a patrol officer in a patrol unit. And they're like, oh, well, and then they look, and there's nobody there. It's just the officer. Like, well, how is this even possible, right? And so they're questioning, and we're hearing it. They have him on speaker, it's like all being piped in, right? They're like, what's going on? And he's like, well, where were you? He's like, well, I went to Tim Hortons, and I'm kind of taking a break, and kind of going on like he's clueless, right? Like, well, what about this person or this person? And he's like, no, I really haven't done a whole lot today, right? Honestly. And everyone's just like scratching their heads, like, how is this possible? And then somebody, of course, says, well, search the car. And so they kind of go through, and then in the back seat, it's the plastic back seats, right? So it's not like you could stuff or hide a cell phone, but this person actually found a way to like hide their cell phone. So it was like, we gathered at that point, like, this suspect must have been in this vehicle and picked up. And the end of the story essentially is that it was a female, and she did get picked up and was like driven home because she gave a fake name that the officer, I don't think it was that officer, but just believed and said, oh, yeah, I can help you out with your problem, whatever it was that she was having, and dropped her off or wherever address she said she needed to get dropped off at. And then she just ditched the phone knowing that she was wanted, but just kind of ditched them. And then, so we just basically tracked a police unit through town, through a donut shop, and then going back to the department. And like I said, everybody from the commissioner on down was watching this, but it's just a funny story that you have all this technology and all these people watching you, like literally hovering over your shoulder while you're doing that work, and then it turns out to be some incredible story like that.
That is quite a story. It almost seems like something that would play out on the Brooklyn Nine-Nine show.
Reno 911.
Reno 911, right? It's just that I'm sure the officer being verged on and was shocked. And it sounded like in a way that he admitted, like, hey, I've been pretty lazy today in my shift. Like I haven't really done anything. The highlights is going to Tim Hortons for me, so I'm not really sure what to tell you. So, oh man, and that's makes me wonder how long that cell phone had been in there. I don't know.
Yeah.
He didn't say, but that is again just the excitement and the fact that the commissioner and everybody else was involved in that whole thing and that whole story. It was quite an exciting day that ended up eventually they got their suspect, which is good to know, but it ended up being a lot for nothing.
Yeah, got all hyped up.
Man. All right, last caller is Amanda. What's some shit you heard in the office?
Well, we were in the middle of a homicide investigation, and one of my detectives was trying to transfer Eastern Standard Time to Universal Time. He pops his head into my office, and he's having a hard time grasping how to do this translation and why we have to do it. pops his head into my office and he says, "We really need to come up with one universal time." So I look over at him and I said, "Welcome to UTC Time Detective."
That's funny.
Yeah, I don't even know when I first learned of UTC. I'm wondering if it only was like 10 years ago.
Yeah,
I don't remember. I don't remember exactly when. I know they didn't teach it in school. If not, I wasn't paying attention that day. But I do not remember when that whole concept came about.
I don't either, but I think it's with like all the cell phones and computers, and
Yeah.
because like now when you get all your like Snapchat downloads or Cash App, it's got the universal time, and then you usually have to convert it. Some of them, like your Cellbrite downloads and stuff, will convert it automatically. But like the Snapchat stuff, you have to go in and convert, and then you have to figure in what time of the year it is for time change, and it's kind of a pain.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's shit you're here in the office. If you have a wild office story that you want to share, email the show at leapodcasts@gmail.com. All right, Angie, let's finish up with personal interest. What do you like to do when you're not being an analyst?
Oh, I'm kind of a homebody, but so I like to watch British murder mysteries on BritBox or PBS Masterpiece.
Oh, man. So what about British TV excites you?
Well, it's the murder mysteries, So I feel like they have better plots.
Mm-hmm.
The mystery's harder for more difficult or complex to figure out, and I don't know, either that or they've got on this English countryside this little village, and it always looks, I don't know, inviting or and like it'd be a lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, I really enjoy the mysteries, and they have a lot of what's called cozy mysteries, so you're not getting a lot of violence, and usually the person that was murdered deserved it, and you don't feel that icky feeling like, oh God, this is horrible.
Yeah.
So it's usually somebody hated in the neighborhood, and then it's usually has some humor to it.
Now,
Like,
do you have an all-time favorite?
well, there's a whole array of like Agatha Christie's that are on like BritBox, but I did have one. It wasn't a cozy mystery, but it was called Bletchley Circle, and it follows four women that were code breakers during World War II. And they're got out of the war and they go back to being housewives, but they still miss that kind of excitement while somebody's murdering women in their area, and they get together and they use their skills to determine the killer's patterns, and just it hits a little closer to of using criminal analysis to solve a crime.
Yeah.
They're looking at the patterns of trains and distance and what times he strikes. So it was really good, and there's a few seasons of that. And then this one's not a British murder mystery. I love Only Murders in the Building.
I've heard good things. I've never watched the show, but I've heard good things.
I love it because it's got humor and murder.
Yeah. I think, and is that on Hulu or is that on Amazon? Amazon. Yeah.
It's Hulu.
Yeah, and you got to keep up. Yeah, and you mentioned BritBox a couple of times. I just heard the term BritBox, I think about 6 months ago for the first time. I'd never heard of it, and then my wife was talking about it.
Yeah, it's a good subscription to have if you like to watch murder mysteries.
There you go. All right, very good. Well, our last segment of the show is Words of the World. This is where you can promote any idea that you wish. Angie, what are your words to the world?
I think I would say that the biggest thing is no matter what career you're in, you can't become complacent. I mean, all of us don't like to step out of our comfort zones, but if you don't, then you're not learning really. So I think that just try and learn new things and don't kind of get stuck in a rut. And just because that's the way it's always been, especially with when I worked at my previous jobs like in McKesson and Poet, it was always, if you say there's a better way to do it, if you can say, hey, there's got to be a better way to do this, then there is. And so I think it's just always learn and always look for improvement, way to improve a process.
And I just wanted to thank everyone at HPD, especially my chief, lieutenant, and spec ops unit for their support and confidence in me, and for giving me an opportunity to do a job that I just love.
Very good. Well, I leave every guest with you've given me just enough to talk bad about you later.
What's that?
but I do appreciate you being on the show, Angie. Thank you
Well, thank
so
you.
much, and you be safe.
And thank you for having me.
Thank you for making it to the end of another episode of Analyst Talk with Jason Elder. You can show your support by sharing this and other episodes found on our website at www.leapodcasts.com. If you have a topic you would like us to cover or have a suggestion for our next guest, please send us an email at leapodcasts@gmail.com. Till next time, analysts, keep talking.